This
I'm
is
not
our new
sure when I
bed.
started
Yeah,
That's
it's
noticing
Victoria
her.
really,
Bay Waters.
Maybe it was the
it's
second
really
time she
nice. I like
remembered
the
how I
color.
liked my coffee. 2 sugars, no cream. Or maybe it was just the silence she carried into the room, the kind that wasn't heavy, just noticeable. Like when the song ends on the radio and nobody bothers to turn it off. The place wasn't anything special. A corner cafe near the laundromat, one of those spots that smelled faintly of ground beans and detergent because of the shared wall. I came here most mornings before work, partly out of habit, partly because it gave me a reason to leave the apartment earlier than I needed to. There's a kind of loneliness that's louder when you stay home too long. She worked behind the counter, not young like the other baristas, not loud either. Mid-40s, maybe. Sharp eyes. A tired smile that looked more genuine than the practiced kind people wear for tips. She wasn't supposed to stand out, but she did. The first time I tried to talk to her, I stumbled. She asked how my day was going and I said, "Yeah, good. I mean, kind of. Well, not yet." She laughed. Not at me, but with this quiet huff like she was trying not to. I remember thinking, she didn't have to be that kind. After that, the routine became ours. Not spoken, not planned. I'd walk in. She'd hand me the same chipped mug instead of the disposable cup. Like it was a secret. Some days we said almost nothing. Other days, she'd ask things that stuck with me longer than they should have. "Do you always carry a notebook?" she asked once, nodding to the one I never opened. I told her it was for ideas. She raised an eyebrow, like she knew I hadn't written anything in weeks. I didn't tell her that the notebook was mostly empty because I didn't know what to put in it anymore. That I'd start a sentence, then stop halfway, the same way I did with texts to people I hadn't talked to in months. Drafts sitting unsent. Words paused. It wasn't attraction, not at first. Not in the way people usually mean. It was something quieter, like I was being watched without judgment, and it felt both safe and terrifying. One morning, she was wiping down the counter when she asked, "Don't you ever get tired of sitting alone?" I froze. She said it casually, as if she were talking about the weather. But the question dug under my skin. I wanted to tell her the truth, that I'd gotten used to it, but never comfortable. Instead, I shrugged. "Guess it's a habit." She gave me that small half-smile again, the one that never reached both sides of her mouth. Bad habits are the hardest to break. That day, I stayed longer than usual, pretended to read, watched the clock hands move. When I finally left, she didn't say goodbye, just nodded, like she knew I'd be back. I thought that was the end of it. Just a coffee, just another morning. But that night, while I was staring at my phone in the dark, wondering who to text but not texting anyone, I saw a message light up. Not from her. She didn't even have my number. It was from my girlfriend's sister. You know, it read, "She doesn't have to be the only one." I just sat there, screen burning in the dark, heart unsteady, because the first person I thought of wasn't my girlfriend at all. It was her. The text from my girlfriend's sister should have been a joke, or maybe some reckless provocation. But it wasn't funny when I kept rereading it. Instead of sleep, I saw the cafe, the chipped mug, the half-smile she gave me like it was stitched from something older than habit. The next morning, I told myself I wouldn't go. I lingered in bed, checked my phone for messages that weren't there. By noon, I was walking toward the cafe anyway, like my legs knew more than I did. She was behind the counter, hair tied back loosely, reading something between customers. Paperback with folded corners. When she noticed me, she slid the book under the counter as if it were something private. "You're late today," she said. I wanted to ask about the book, but instead I shrugged. "Slept in." She poured my coffee, handed me the chipped mug. My hand brushed hers, accident but not entirely. Too quick to mean anything, too slow to mean nothing. That silence again, the one that hummed between us. I sat down near the window. She surprised me by joining me a few minutes later, cup in hand, apron still on. "Don't tell my boss," she said. Dry humor. But her eyes looked tired, softer than usual. We sat without speaking. The sound of the grinder, the hiss of milk steaming, all of it in the background. I noticed the faint scar on her wrist, pale and curved like a question mark. My eyes lingered too long because she noticed. Kitchen accident, she said. Then, after a pause, long time ago, back when I was married. She said it like she was dropping a coin into a well, meant to vanish, not echo. But it echoed anyway. I nodded, unsure of the right response. My girlfriend had never mentioned that she was divorced. Strange, that something so simple could feel like stepping into a deeper room of someone's life. You? She asked. Not married, I said. Came out too quick, almost defensive. Then I added, just figuring things out. Her gaze held mine a second longer than it should have. It was enough to make me shift in my seat, to remember the text waiting on my phone, glowing like a dare. In my head, I imagined saying something, asking what she was reading, asking why she always gave me the chipped mug, asking if she ever thought about the years between us. But I stayed quiet. Words felt like trespass. Instead, I finished my coffee. She reached across the table as if to take the mug, but her fingers touched mine again, this time deliberate, lingering just a second too long. Careful, she said softly, as if she were talking about the mug, not me. I carried that touch with me all the way home, heavier than any words could have been. After that afternoon, I told myself I'd keep some distance. Nothing had happened, not really, but the way her fingers brushed mine lingered in my head longer than it should have. I thought of it when I shaved in the morning, when I stared at the empty chair across from me at dinner. It was like carrying around a secret no one asked me to keep. So I skipped the cafe for 2 days, made coffee at home, bitter and wrong, walked slower past the corner, as if my hesitation would disguise itself. On the 3rd day I caved. She noticed. Of course she noticed. You disappeared, she said, not accusing, but with that tone that made it impossible to lie. Busy, I muttered. She studied me like she didn't believe it, but didn't push. Just handed me the chipped mug again, sliding it across the counter with the quiet familiarity of habit. That should have been the end of it. But then she stepped closer, lowering her voice. You don't strike me as someone who likes routines. So why this one? The question caught me. I wanted to say, because of you. Instead, I gave a half shrug. Guess it makes the mornings easier. Before she could answer, the bell above the door jingled. My girlfriend walked in. I hadn't even told her I came here. She looked around, surprised. You come here? The woman's expression didn't change, but I felt the air shift, something guarded sliding back into place. She busied herself with wiping the counter. Sometimes, I said. My voice sounded thinner than usual. My girlfriend ordered quickly, barely noticing the landlady's quiet presence. But I noticed everything. How she avoided my eyes now, how the distance between us felt wider than the length of the counter. We left together, my girlfriend looping her arm through mine. I should have felt comfort in that, but all I could think about was the way the older woman's hand had brushed mine days ago, and how different it felt. That night, I wrote half a message on my phone. Do you ever think about, and stopped. Deleted it. Started again. Deleted again. My thumb hovered over her contact, even though I didn't have her number. The next morning, I went back alone. She was at the counter, reading again. She looked up, and for a second I thought she wouldn't acknowledge me. Then she closed the book and slid it toward me, spine worn, pages yellowed. You asked last time, she said, about what I was reading. Here. I took it, fingertips brushing hers again. The silence was louder this time, thick enough to choke on. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words stayed locked in my throat. Her gaze held mine. For one heartbeat, maybe two, we leaned toward each other without moving at all. A space so fragile it felt like the air would shatter if either of us breathed too loudly. Then she pulled back. Too quick. Careful, she said again. But her voice wasn't steady this time. It happened on a Tuesday evening, the kind of day where the air felt heavier than it should. The cafe had closed early, but the lights in her apartment above were still on. I'd been walking past, not planning to stop, when I saw her outside on the bench by the corner. She was drinking tea from a dented thermos, watching the streetlights blink awake. No apron, just a sweater, sleeves pushed up, hair loose around her shoulders. I almost kept walking, but she looked up at me, and there was no avoiding it. "You're out late," she said. "So are you," I answered. My voice cracked a little. She tapped the bench beside her. A quiet invitation. I sat down, careful to leave space, though it didn't feel like enough. For a while we didn't talk. Just listened, to the sound of tires hissing over wet pavement, a dog barking a few blocks away. I thought maybe that would be it. Just silence side by side. Safe. But then she said softly, "Your girlfriend was in again. Yesterday." I froze. "Yeah," I said too quickly. "She doesn't look like she knows you come here every day." Her tone wasn't sharp, but the words cut anyway. My throat tightened. "It's just coffee," I said. She turned toward me, her eyes catching the glow of the street lamp. "You and I both know it isn't." The words landed like a stone between us. I wanted to deny it, to laugh it off, but the truth was pulsing too close to the surface. My chest ached with it. "Why do you keep giving me the chipped mug?" I blurted. She blinked, caught off guard. Then her mouth curved, not into a smile, but something sadder. "Because it's imperfect. And I thought maybe you wouldn't mind." That was it. That was the breaking point. Not jealousy, not anger. Just that sentence, simple and unguarded. Something in me cracked. I let out a shaky breath. "I think about you more than I should." The silence stretched, unbearable. I stared at my hands, afraid to see her face. Afraid she'd stand up and walk away. But she didn't. Instead, she said, barely above a whisper, "You're too young to waste your time on someone like me. It should have ended there." But I turned, and for the first time, she didn't look away. Her eyes were wide, vulnerable. The wall she kept between us pulled thin enough to see through. I leaned forward without meaning to, heart thudding in my throat. We were close enough now that I could feel the warmth of her breath, the faint smell of tea and rain. The air trembled. 1 inch more and it would have been irreversible. But she stood abruptly, clutching the thermos. Her voice steadied as she said, "You should go." And I did. But I carried that almost kiss with me, heavier than any touch we'd ever shared. The next morning, the cafe was closed. No handwritten sign on the door, no explanation. Just locked glass and the reflection of myself standing there like an intruder. I waited 10 minutes before walking away, telling myself she deserved a day off. By the third day, the windows were still dark, and something in me shifted from curiosity to worry. When the cafe finally opened again, it wasn't her behind the counter. A younger girl, college-aged, hair in a messy bun, told me the woman had taken some time off. No details, just a shrug. I tried not to read into it, but the timing was too sharp. The bench, the almost, the way she'd pulled back like she was afraid of her own body leaning forward. I stopped going for a while, made excuses, told myself it was better if I didn't. But the truth was, mornings stretched longer without that chipped mug, without her voice asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. 2 weeks later, I saw her, not in the cafe, but outside the grocery store, her arms full of paper bags. She looked different, tired but steadier, like someone who had chosen a new routine and was determined to keep it. She saw me too. A pause, just long enough to register something, before she offered a small, polite smile. Nothing more. "Need help with those?" I asked. She shook her head. "Got it." Her voice was even, not unkind, but distant, like I was a neighbor she barely remembered. I almost let her walk away, but the words slipped out before I could stop them. Did I do something wrong? That made her stop. She adjusted the bags against her hip, met my eyes. For a second, I thought she might say it, that it wasn't me, it was her, or maybe that it was me all along. But instead she said, "I have a daughter." It landed heavier than I expected. Not shocking, but grounding. A truth she hadn't chosen to share until now. I realized how little I actually knew about her, despite all the mornings and silences and chipped mugs. "She's 23, she added almost reluctantly. "Close to your age." The weight of it settled between us. She shifted the bags again, gave me a nod, and walked toward her car. I didn't follow. That night, I opened my phone, wrote a message I knew I wouldn't send, I don't care about that. I miss the mornings. I miss you. I stared at the words until the screen dimmed, then deleted them. The bench near the cafe was empty when I passed it the next day. I didn't sit down, just kept walking, pretending I didn't notice the hollow it left behind. It was late when I saw her again. The cafe had closed hours earlier, but the upstairs light glowed through thin curtains. I stood outside longer than I should have, shifting from one foot to the other, rehearsing words I'd never say. Then the door opened. She stepped out, cardigan pulled tight, carrying a bag of trash to the bins. She startled when she saw me. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I know." My voice was rough, like I'd swallowed gravel. We stood there, the night pressing around us. The hum of a streetlight, the distant rush of a train. Ordinary sounds, but they felt like they were holding the silence up between us. Finally, she sighed. "I thought if I stayed away, it would make things easier." "Has it?" I asked. Her eyes softened, but her shoulders stayed tense. "No," the word cracked something open in me. I stepped closer, careful not to cross a line I couldn't undo. "I don't know what this is supposed to be. I just know mornings don't feel right without you." She closed her eyes briefly, like the confession hurt to hear. When she opened them again, they were shining in the weak light. "You're too young." "Too." "Don't," I said, more sharply than I meant. Then softer. "Don't say it like you're protecting me. I'm the one standing here." Her breath caught. For a moment, I thought she'd retreat again, shut the door, disappear into that upstairs apartment and never come back out. But instead, she set the trash bag down and leaned against the railing, arms folded tight across her chest. "My daughter. She's older than you," she whispered. "I know. You shouldn't want this. Maybe not. But I do." The words hung there raw, unpolished. My heart thudded against my ribs, each beat counting the risk. She shook her head, a small, helpless laugh escaping her. "You don't make this easy." "I'm not trying to." The quiet stretched, not heavy this time, but fragile. She unfolded her arms, resting her hands on the railing. I noticed the way her fingers trembled just slightly, the same fingers that had once lingered on mine over a chipped mug. "Do you ever regret it already?" she asked. "Standing here?" I said. "Not for a second." For the first time in weeks, she smiled. Not the half smile, not polite, but something unguarded, weary and warm all at once. I didn't reach for her. She didn't reach for me. It wasn't that kind of night. Instead, I let the silence answer and she let it stay. When she finally spoke, it was barely above a whisper. "Okay." That was it. Just that one word. But it felt like the ground had shifted under both of us. Enough that nothing would ever be quite the same again. Time didn't change everything at once. It was small things at first. She opened the cafe earlier some mornings and I started showing up later, no longer rushing in as if every day depended on it. The chipped mug still found its way to my table, but now it felt less like a secret and more like a given. Her daughter came by once, taller than me, sharp-eyed, carrying the same tired grace her mother had. I felt the weight of their resemblance and the difference in years between us, but the world didn't collapse. She introduced me as a tenant, a friend, and the words were steady enough to hold us up. We learned how to sit in the quiet without fighting it. Some evenings, I'd find her on the bench again, thermos balanced on her knee. She didn't tap the spot beside her anymore. I just sat down and it was understood. It wasn't perfect. I still caught myself drafting messages I'd never send, staring at them too long before deleting. She still hesitated sometimes, slipping her hand back into her pocket after reaching for mine. But little by little, those hesitations softened. One morning, it must have been months later, I glanced at the clock as I walked into the cafe. 8:47 a.m. exactly. She was already pouring the coffee, sliding it across the counter without looking up. "You're late," she murmured. "Right on time," I said. Her mouth curved into that almost smile, the one I'd memorized, though now it reached her eyes more often. We didn't talk about what we were, not in big words. There was no confession, No, I love you, hanging in the air like a balloon waiting to pop. Just the everyday moments, stitched together. Her hand brushing mine as she passed me tea, my voice breaking the silence when I read aloud a line from the old paperback she'd once lent me. The way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention. One evening, sitting on that same bench where we had almost crossed the line months before, she leaned against me, just slightly, her shoulder brushing mine. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't even a promise. But it was steady, warm. I thought about all the mornings I'd sat alone, all the unsent messages, the silences that used to feel like walls, and how now silence wasn't absence, it was presence. She poured tea from her thermos, handed it to me without a word. I took it, sipping slowly, the taste faintly bitter, faintly sweet. Careful, she said, almost out of habit. I smiled, setting the cup down on the bench between us. I know, and that was enough. Sparkle's engagement close. Did this story stay with you? Crescent Moon, what kind of quiet, Rayal love stories do you want to hear next? Hopeful, bittersweet, or something in between? Share your thoughts below.